Doctors gave him medicine in the 1950s, but it quickly became something he depended on too much. His daughter Karen would later reveal that the anxious characters audiences laughed at were a reflection of his own fears. He wasn't just acting nervous, he was actually living it. As his movie career struggled, the gap between the man and the character got bigger. By the 1970s, Don tried to reinvent himself with The Don Knotts Show, a variety program meant to show off his talents. But the series failed to compete with other popular variety shows, and was cancelled within a year. Professionally, he continued to find work, guest appearances, Disney comedies, and later regular roles on Three's Company. Yet, despite the steady jobs, there was a feeling that things were going downhill. He was no longer the Emmy-winning star, but a supporting actor, filling spaces once lit by brighter flames. In his personal life, Don drifted. His first marriage was over, and though he was often seen with women, lasting companionship was hard to find. Karen remembered that people loved Barney Fife, but they didn't always know how to love Don Knotts. Fame gave him recognition, but it didn't cure the loneliness or the nagging feeling that his best days had already passed. Getting sick and final love. By the 1980s, Don Knotts had secured his place as a television legend, but his personal life was falling apart once again. His second marriage to Laura Lee Sackner ended in 1983 after nearly 10 years of tension. The breaking point came when Don was diagnosed with macular degeneration, a disease that threatened to take away his eyesight. The news crushed him. For a man whose job depended on timing, facial expressions, and performance, the possibility of going blind was unbearable. Laura Lee later admitted that his despair over the diagnosis, and the way it took over his life, was what finally ended their marriage. Thankfully, surgery brought back much of his vision, but the scare left deep emotional wounds. Don's habit of smoking throughout his life had already done its damage. By the late 1990s, he was facing lung cancer. Though he had quit smoking more than 10 years earlier, the disease came back to collect what it was owed. Even then, Don kept how serious his illness was quiet, not wanting to destroy the image fans had of him. To his children, he still made jokes and brushed off questions, insisting he would get better. In the middle of all this trouble, Don found unexpected love once more. In 1987, while working on the sitcom What a Country, he met actress Frances Yarbrough. At the time, she was much younger and worked behind the scenes helping Don with his lines. Their connection seemed unlikely, but over time, it grew into something real. In 2002, they got married, giving Don the stability he had wanted for so long, but rarely found. Frances later said she was drawn to his vulnerability, the way he could make the world laugh while privately fighting so much pain. Their years together were short. By 2006, Don's cancer had gotten worse and couldn't be treated anymore. Even as his health failed, he refused to give in to despair. He kept his sense of humor, performing one last private show for family and friends who visited him at his bedside. His daughter Karen remembered that even as he was dying, he made them laugh so hard that she had to leave the room. It was his final gift, the instinct to create laughter in the face of death. The final goodbye and daughter's revelation. In February 2006, Don Knotts' condition got worse. The cancer spread, and doctors at UCLA Medical Center knew his time was short. Family and close friends gathered quietly around his bedside. Among them was Andy Griffith, the man who had once been his partner in television magic. Griffith later talked about those final moments in an interview with Larry King. He whispered to Don, calling him Jess, a name known only to his closest friends, and begged him to keep breathing. Though Don could no longer speak, he moved his shoulder slightly, a final sign that he had heard, that their friendship remained strong even at the edge of death. It was a private farewell between two men whose friendship had defined an era of television. Karen Knotts, his daughter, was also there holding his hand. She later admitted that her father's instinct for comedy never left him. Even as he struggled to breathe, he said or did something so funny that Karen and her stepmother burst into laughter. Karen ran out of the room feeling ashamed to laugh in front of her dying father. Years later, she regretted it deeply. A director friend reminded her that laughter was what Don lived for, and that he would have wanted her to stay. "I should have just stood there and laughed," she later confessed. That was who he was. At 81 years old, Don Knotts passed away on February 24, 2006. The man who had brought so much joy left quietly with his family at his side. His final wife, Frances Yarbrough, inherited his estate, but the legacy Don left wasn't measured in property. It was in the laughter echoing across generations. In her book, Tied Up in Knots, Karen finally revealed the full truth about her father's life. The painful childhood, the lifelong battle with anxiety, the loneliness that fame could never heal. She didn't write to expose him, but to honor him, to show that behind the lovable Barney Fife was a man of immense complexity. Her words remind us that the people who make us laugh the hardest are often the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. Don Knotts lived a life full of contradictions. To the world, he was the beloved deputy who stumbled his way into television history. To his family, he was a man battling demons of anxiety, loneliness, and fragile health. His daughter Karen, now 71, has broken her silence not to tarnish his image, but to give us the whole truth. A reminder that even the brightest laughter often comes from the darkest places. What remains is his legacy of joy, of unforgettable characters, and of courage in the face of private pain. Don Knotts never stopped making people laugh, even in his final hours. That perhaps is the truest measure of his gift. What about you? Do you remember laughing at Barney Fife's nervous antics on The Andy Griffith Show? Share your memories of Don Knotts in the comments below. And if this story touched you, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew. When you hear the name Don Knotts, you probably think of nervous stuttering, big bulging eyes, and a laugh that made people happy for years. He was Barney Fife, the clumsy deputy on The Andy Griffith Show, who turned being awkward into something really funny. He won 5 Emmy Awards and became one of TV's most loved stars. But there's more to his story than just the cheering crowds. Under all that laughter was a man who was hurt by fear, sickness, and being alone. His daughter, Karen Knotts, is now 71, and she's decided to tell everyone about the private pain her dad carried around. She wants to share the truth that was hidden behind all those years of smiles. She's not trying to make people think badly of him, but she wants to tell the whole story. Behind that lovable deputy was a very sensitive person who went through terrible childhood experiences, really bad worry, and fought against sickness that even being famous couldn't fix. A childhood full of dark times. Jesse Donald Knotts was born on July 21, 1924 in Morgantown, West Virginia. He was the youngest of 4 boys. He was born when his family was already having a really hard time. His mum, Elsie Lucetta, was 40 years old when he was born. His dad, William Jesse, had serious personal problems that made life at home really difficult, and you never knew what would happen next. Things were never steady at home, and young Don grew up in a place where nothing was certain, and this really affected him for the rest of his life. His 3 older brothers were much older than him, and instead of being close friends, they mostly did their own thing. Don really looked up to his brother Sid, who was naturally funny and could make even the worst days seem better. When Sid suddenly died from an asthma attack, it was heartbreaking for the whole family, especially for Don. This was the first time he really experienced losing someone, and not having the brother he admired most left him with sadness that never really went away. When everything around him was so hard, Don used his imagination to escape from it all. He made a puppet called Danny, who became both a friend and someone he could do comedy with. With Danny, Don could create fun little shows that helped him forget about all the problems around him. At school, he started using humor more openly, putting on little acts that showed he had real talent. Even though his classmates voted him class president and liked being around him, Don still felt like he didn't really belong. The difference between how other people saw him and how he felt inside would be something that stayed with him his whole life. His daughter Karen Knotts later said that her father's nervous, high-strung personality on TV wasn't just acting, it was actually showing the worry he carried with him since he was a kid. Every laugh, every exaggerated eye twitch came from something that was really happening inside him. Comedy became like armor for him, a way to turn fear into something that connected him with other people. The little boy from Morgantown had figured out that being funny could not only make other people happy, but it could also protect him from the dark feelings he carried inside. Finding a place to perform while wearing a uniform. When Don's first try at making it in New York show business didn't work out, he came back home feeling crushed, but he didn't give up. It was 1943, and since the world was at war, he joined the United States Army. But instead of being sent to fight, he was put on stage. He served in the 6,817th Special Services Battalion, which was a group made to bring entertainment and make soldiers feel better when they were under a lot of stress. It was here, traveling all over the Pacific with a variety show called Stars and Gripes. That Don discovered how powerful his nervous energy could be. The soldiers loved him, not because he was brave like a hero, but because he showed their own fear and worry in a way that turned pain into laughter. By the time he left the army in 1946, he had earned medals, including the World War II Victory Medal, the Philippine Liberation Medal, and 4 Bronze Service Stars. But more than the awards, he now had better stage skills and a sense of purpose he had never really felt at home. The boy who used to be scared of his father's anger was now standing in front of crowds and getting their attention. After the war, Don went back to West Virginia University and got a degree in education with a minor in speech. Graduating in 1948, on campus he performed a lot, using both his puppet Danny and his own quick wit to win over audiences. He also met Catherine Metz, a minister's daughter who became his first wife. In 1949, with only $100 in his pocket and Catherine by his side, Don went back to New York City. This time, he had something more valuable than money. He had experienced the ability to bounce back and the drive to succeed. Success didn't come right away. Casting directors still thought he was too awkward, too jumpy for main roles, but he kept trying, and that kept him going with radio jobs and small performances. Slowly, a career started to form. He got parts on radio western shows like Bobby Benson and the B.B. Bar Riders, and eventually appeared on TV in Search for Tomorrow. For the first time, his anxious behavior found a place on screen. Don was getting closer to the big break that would change his life. The Andy Griffith breakthrough. By the mid-1950s, Don Knotts was no longer just another actor in New York trying to make it. His unique style caught the attention of Steve Allen, who put him in funny sketches on The Steve Allen Show in 1956. Don played jittery, bug-eyed characters in fake interviews, and audiences loved it. For the first time, his nervous energy wasn't something that held him back. It was what made him special. That same year, he worked with Andy Griffith again on Broadway in a show called No Time for Sergeants. Don's role as a bumbling soldier was a perfect match for Andy's country charm. They worked really well together, and this planted the idea for what would become one of TV's most famous partnerships. In 1960, Griffith started The Andy Griffith Show. Don, half kidding around, suggested he should be cast as the deputy to Andy's sheriff. The idea worked, and soon Barney Fife was born. It was the role that changed everything. Week after week, Don turned being awkward into pure comedy gold. His twitchy faces, his stuttering way of talking, and his endless energy turned Barney into someone the whole country loved. In 5 years, Don had won 5 Emmy Awards and secured his place in TV history. But being successful on screen came with a heavy price in his personal life. His marriage to Catherine Metz, which had started with so much hope, was falling apart because of the pressure from his career. The long hours on set and Don's constant worry created distance that neither of them could fix. Reports say that Catherine never really fit in with the Hollywood crowd, and her relationship with Andy Griffith's wife was tense. After 13 years and 2 children together, the marriage ended in divorce. Karen Knotts, his daughter, later admitted that, while audiences loved her father, life at home was far from easy. Don's constant worrying, his tiredness from performing, and his need for anxiety medicine made family life really difficult. The man who made millions of people laugh often came home drained and quiet. For Karen, the difference between America's favorite deputy and the father she knew was shocking. The breakthrough that gave Don fame also made the personal problems that haunted him for decades even worse. Fame, anxiety, and the lonely middle years. In 1965, when he was at the height of his fame, Don Knotts made a decision that shocked fans. Thinking The Andy Griffith Show would end after 5 seasons, he decided not to renew his contract and instead signed a movie deal with Universal Pictures. He dreamed of becoming a leading man, of stepping out from Barney Fife's shadow. For a while, it seemed like it might work. Movies like The Incredible Mr. Limpet and The Reluctant Astronaut let him be the star. But the magic of Mayberry was hard to create again. Audiences loved Don, but only as the jittery sidekick. His 1969 movie, The Love God, a raunchy comedy about a Playboy publisher, proved that viewers couldn't accept him as a romantic lead. The box office failed, and so did Don's confidence. Meanwhile, his private battles got worse. Don had suffered from really bad anxiety for a long time, often spending days in bed before a performance.